guys, welcome to another episode of the Entertainment Now podcast. My name is Nick.
I'm Ian.
And like always, if you're watching this on YouTube, because we always put the videos up on YouTube, make sure you give us the old thumbs up and drop us a comment. do all that YouTube-y kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to us on your favorite podcatcher, make sure you leave us a 5-star review.
That's 5 stars.
If not, Ian will hunt you down like the dog you are.
I'm not much of a hunter.
What's been going on, Ian?
Let's see what has been going on. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual.
Nothing at all. Nothing. Remember, like I said last time, it doesn't necessarily have to be. This is me opening the door to you to talk about any topic you would like to talk about. You know, like congresswomen vaping in the middle of a performance, and
oh god, don't even get me started on that.
I'm sorry, like as somebody who so the background is what's her name,
Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, she was at a performance at a theater in Colorado. It was a performance of Beetlejuice, which is a musical.
Yes.
She was creating a scene and was asked to leave. She claimed that she was just singing too loudly, which you're not at a rock concert,
right?
You're at a performance. Like,
not only that, but there's video of her like with her camera, flash photography. There's video of her vaping. You know, you're indoors. It's vaping is considered the same as smoking in terms of where it's appropriate, and indoors is not appropriate.
And I will say that, and maybe people don't know this, but like a lot of performances you go to, they tell you that what you're watching is copyrighted. So you are not, it is illegal for you to videotape.
Right.
So that's why they tell you no videotaping at all.
And flash photography has always been a no-no in any theater,
absolutely,
ever. Yeah, you know,
absolutely.
This isn't a new thing. You know, we live in a society. we have rules, and they should apply to everybody. And apparently she doesn't think they apply to her.
And like I was saying before, like, you're not at a rock concert. Like,
even if you were,
you're supposed to be letting the people on stage sing.
Right.
You're there to watch their performance.
Right.
And I get it, like at a concert, you know, musicians are used to like flashes and, you know, stuff going off on stage and everything else. But when you're in a play, man, that shit is fucking distracting as hell.
Right.
And it's extremely rude and inconsiderate to the performers you're there watching.
Absolutely.
But yeah, she also refused to leave.
Yeah.
They told her that they were, I don't know if you know everything.
I saw a bit of it on World News, and you know, she did the whole, you know who I am? I hate that. I fucking hate that. Who gives a shit who you are? You have to follow the rules just like everyone else.
But so she refused to leave. They said that they would have to contact the police. She said, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So then before the police showed up, though, she got up and left.
Yeah.
But
I saw them walking her out. She finally got up, you know, and I escorted her out.
Well, no, she got up and left on her own. They did not have to escort her.
Well, there was an usher there waiting for her to get up, and he walked behind her, and whoever that guy was, I'm assuming was not her husband.
No, it was not. No, she's divorced.
Oh, I thought she was still married.
No, she got divorced. So apparently she's been dating this. And apparently the guy's a Democrat too. Some other. I just saw the headline up before we started recording. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Give me 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves.
The Russian Revolution was neither Russian nor a revolution.
I can't. I don't know. I'm not gonna. I can't find it right now. But she was. I guess he is like another guy that owns a restaurant, but he owns. He does like drag shows and stuff at his restaurant, and he's very like
Huh.
pro LGBT and everything. At least his restaurant is.
Huh.
But apparently he backs like Democrats in Colorado. They've been dating for the last couple of months.
Huh. I don't know. I mean, hey, cool. I guess you can see the other side, your
See,
opponent's.
she can reach out. She's reaching across the aisle.
Yeah, because she's getting the D. The D must be really good.
The D from the Democrat. He means Democrat. You're getting that Democrat. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So yeah, I thought that was really kind of funny. Like the whole "don't you know who the fuck I am" kind of thing.
Yeah,
which you're
I can't
right.
stand that.
That always irritates the hell out of me. I don't. There was I think a country music singer that just got in trouble. He almost played that card. Like you can see it in the video, like him like starting to say that, and he stops himself. But
well, at least there's a little bit of self-awareness there.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but he got pulled over by the cops, and the cops asked him to get back in his car, and he refused or something like that. And he was they were like, well, we'll have to take you to jail. And he's like, fine, take me to jail. I don't give a shit. And then once he realized like they're handcuffing him, he starts apologizing, and then he starts do the whole "don't you know who the fuck I am" kind of thing. Then he stopped himself short of it. So at least he knew it was a bad play.
Aren't these essentially the same people who say that police brutality wouldn't happen if people would just cooperate?
Yeah, just comply.
Yeah.
I know. But don't comply with masks or anything else, right?
Well, I mean, you don't have to comply if you're white, apparently.
So apparently, kind of go back to the mask thing real quick. So my oldest son, he's in college, and he's gonna be majoring in musical theater, but that's how I know the whole, not supposed to videotape and all that other stuff. But anyway, so there were some pictures. So my wife is in a Facebook group with a bunch of other parents from the college that he goes to, because it's all like incoming freshmen is the parents that are in this group.
Right.
Originally the group was put together to like help each other out, and they need to do this or need to do that, logistics kind of stuff to help, that kind of stuff. But it's kind of turned into because there were some pictures of one of the practices recently. It wasn't the practice for the play my son is in, because they're doing, I guess there's like 3 different plays that the college is doing right now. But there are pictures that the college posted of the director and everyone in the room wearing masks, and apparently people were not happy about that, and they're like, oh, my kid is not going to be wearing a mask and this and that and blah blah blah.
Well,
and
your kid is 18 years old. Your kid can do whatever the fuck they want.
Well,
second of all, you live in a society. There's fucking rules, or at the very least there's, I don't know, courtesy.
So, and that's kind of what I was talking to my wife about. I said, I mean, the director could be immunocompromised. He could be a cancer patient. There could be 1,000
family members who are all of those things. Yeah.
And apparently what it is if it's written in the syllabus that you have to wear masks in class, fuck you. You don't get the right. You can't refuse. You can fail the class.
As I say, you just don't go to the class.
Yep.
That's where you're right.
They said if it's written in the syllabus, then you don't get the option.
Right.
You have to wear it.
Good.
And like I said, it could be, there could be very legitimate reasons why the professor has everyone wear a mask in class, and who fucking cares? Like, that's something that I never understood about it is, God forbid you have a little compassion for fellow Americans, like
just people, fellow people.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it crosses nationality and everything else. Right. I've just never understood it.
No.
Like, but we're healthcare professionals and you know, we didn't have an option to not wear it either. So
I'm suspecting it's probably going to come back for us too, because we haven't had it.
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't think it will.
The numbers are going up, so I mean, who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, COVID is it's a different illness now than what it was, 3 years ago.
No, it's basically the common cold now.
Well, it's more of an upper respiratory infection now than what it was before. When it was a novel virus, it was a lower respiratory infection. That's what was killing everyone.
Right.
And as it mutated over the next 3 years, it's become more of a upper respiratory infection. That's why you get a lot of people with like sinus and issues and things like that, and congestion from it. But I don't know. I don't think we'll go back to wearing it, but
I kind of hope not. But I'm one of those people. If it's required, I just fucking put the mask on.
Yeah, I mean, if it's required, I don't care. I'll wear it, but I prefer not to.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice not having them pile up in my car anymore.
Yeah,
having a little garbage bag full of fucking masks.
I was running out of good masks anyway. I was down. So like when it first became, so when masks were first required at the hospital, we had a supply of like some really good masks. And before they were gone, I grabbed a couple boxes of them, and they lasted me until, the masks weren't required anymore. I think I was down like the last 2 or 3 masks I had. So,
are you frozen on your end?
No,
You're frozen on my end.
Oh,
that's okay. As long as it's on your end, I think your end's on.
It's all good on my end.
There you are. There you are. You're moving again.
But that's not what we were planning to talk about today. But I just thought it was really funny. Well, I figured you'd have some kind of comments.
I did have notes on your freezing up, but I guess I could put those away.
I figured you'd have comments on the whole Lauren Boebert thing.
Well, I mean, other than she's a cunt, I mean, it's the only comment I can have on it.
The interesting thing is, like, she has definitely loosened up in her antics and stuff in Washington. I think she's she acts a certain way in Washington, and then she acts a very different way at home. That's what I was kind of saying. She's kind of flip flopped. She's
just a piece of shit all the way around.
She does crazy shit in Washington, and then when she's in Colorado, she acts more of like a centrist, because she almost lost. She won the election by like a couple of hundred votes or so. It was like 500 or 600 votes.
Well, Washington is where it counts. So she's still a piece of shit. So, and don't get me wrong, if you take all that out of it, she's an attractive woman. But
she's still batshit crazy though.
But yeah, you put all that other shit in there, she's she might as well be Marjorie Taylor Greene with brown hair. Who is not an attractive woman, in my
apparently
opinion.
They don't get along very well. But anyway, so if you're unfamiliar with what we do, Ian and I do a YouTube channel also. It's called The Vinyl Den. Mm-hmm. And recently, Ian, we did a video about the most overrated albums of the 60s.
We did?
And
wow, I'm gonna have to watch that.
And we didn't get as many views as we did when we did the overrated albums of the 70s.
Right?
But there were some really interesting comments on this video.
Huh.
And I was a little kind of surprised where they went, though. There was a whole lot of people that were very fucking mad at me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for saying the Sgt. Pepper was overrated.
Okay.
And even though I kept trying to defend myself and say, look, I think it's a good album. I just think the Beatles did a lot of other great things in the 60s.
Right.
There are albums before and after that I think are better albums than Sgt. Pepper. And a lot of times when you hear people talk about, bands, in the 90s and even in the 2000s, if they think a band did a really great album, they say, well, that's that band's
Sgt. Pepper.
X's Sgt. Pepper.
Right.
Which is
Ozzy made a comment about that. He goes, and this was several years ago, but he goes, I haven't made my Sgt. Pepper yet.
Yeah. So,
so.
And it should be like, I haven't made my Abbey Road yet, or right. Revolver. I think Revolver is a much more incredible album than
I would probably agree with that. I mean, I guess maybe we have to look at it from a different perspective. We have to think about it like from a cultural perspective rather than a preference, like an opinion.
Yeah, and I did say that
Sgt. Pepper really is the first, and by all accounts, or by most accounts, kind of the first progressive rock album. So really, it is like the beginning of even several different subgenres of music, you know, and it really kind of started to blend. You know, you had psychedelic music, but it was, I don't know, more it made it psychedelic slightly more mainstream.
Yeah.
I don't know. I definitely know that I can see where people pinpoint it as kind of the first progressive rock album.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess from a cultural perspective, yes, Sgt. Pepper is not overrated, but from an opinion perspective,
I mean, I still think it is.
Well, no, from an opinion perspective, I can see your point, because
get out of here.
I agree that for those listening on audio, that was Nick shooing his cat away. He wasn't telling me to get out of here.
It's my daughter's cat.
Yeah,
attacking me.
But from an opinion perspective, like for me, I think, and I said it in the video, I think Magical Mystery Tour is a better album. I like the songs better on it. And yes, I totally agree. Revolver is probably either my favorite or my second favorite Beatles album.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think as far as like 60s stuff go, I would put Revolver above Sgt. Pepper. I would put Magical Mystery Tour above it. I would put Abbey Road above it. You know, like at least those three, you know, are, I think, even
arguably
better albums. Yeah. And even like, and Revolver was, you know, a very different kind of album for the Beatles also. You know, it wasn't, they didn't just start dabbling into different things with Sgt. Pepper, but I don't know. And I even said, like in several of the comments, I even admitted and said, like, I understand that album in particular, I'm sure is you had to be there kind of album to really get it, really understand it. You know, and I acknowledge that you know, though it was an album that was released, you know, over a decade before I was born. So I wasn't there in the late 60s when that album came out, and I didn't get to witness how revolutionary it was firsthand. I kind of get that. But a lot of people said that about Velvet Revolver's, or not Velvet Revolver, Velvet Underground's first album also. And like I still don't get it. Like of all the albums we talked about on that episode, that's the only album that I hate. I can't stand that album.
Yeah.
And I've owned it on CD, I owned it on cassette. Like I've tried multiple times to listen to it. It just isn't my thing. And it's not just the psychedelic aspect of it, which, you know, the psychedelic aspect of Piper the Gates of Dawn is kind of what I have the issue with that album also. It's a little too psychedelic for me. But like Velvet Underground, it's just a bad album. Like if you listen, like they released, I think 4 or 5 albums there from their debut album all the way to Loaded, which came out in the early 70s. Loaded was the last album before Lou Reed left. Like every one of those albums got progressively better.
Right.
And I think Loaded, in my opinion, is their best album.
And I would say that it's a rare occurrence. It's probably not as rare as I'm making it sound, but it's a slightly rare occurrence when a debut album is the best that a band has to offer. And if it is, then they become like a one hit wonder. Or they disappear after their third or fourth album. You know, or you kind of want a band that starts strong, but gets better. So the albums that come after are better than their debut album, in my opinion.
I think, like,
excuse me.
Speaking of that, like, I don't know. I think of a band like Guns N' Roses. I think Appetite for Destruction is their best album. But I think their music transitions so much from, they really only have 2 like studio albums, because Lies is half live and it's half live and it's half, you know,
B-sides,
demos, B-sides basically from Appetite for Destruction. But and you know, the some of the stuff that's on Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 existed prior to Appetite for Destruction also. But like Appetite for Destruction, in my opinion, is their best album. Their music changed so much from that album until from there to Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I think those are also incredible albums.
Right.
But I would still put Appetite, you know, at the number one spot for them. Silverchair is another band where I think their first album, Frog Stomp, is their best. But their music like drastically evolved throughout their career.
Right.
But by the time Young Modern came out, man, it was a completely different fucking band. And I think Neon Ballroom, like musically, overall, from start to finish, artistically speaking, is probably their best album. Right. But my favorite is still Frog Stomp.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, it's not as common though, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In terms of like, you know, a lot of the bands that I like, you start to see their second album is like the next step. That's where, okay, everything's gelling, we're firing on all cylinders, and this is what's going to push us forward. It's not so much that debut album. You know? And that's true of a lot of artists that I listen to, you know.
And I think that's mainly because like when you go into your first album, a lot of times like that stuff is like self-recorded, or it's recorded through like a much smaller label. You know, you don't have the budget really to invest in great producers and great studios and stuff like that. And then once your first album does good, you know, and you might get picked up by a bigger label, or you get a bigger budget, then you're really able to. I don't remember what band it was. I'm trying to remember there's a band from like from the early part of the 70s, maybe like late 60s, early 70s, where that's how it was for them. Like their first album was recorded in like a matter of like 3 weeks. And then was it shit?
Well, Sabbath recorded their first album in 7 days.
Yeah. And then for their second album, they were given like 9 months to record. And I don't remember if this is like Buffalo Springfield, but it's one of those kind of bands from that period. Yeah, their second album was over the span, I think 8.5 or 9 months that they recorded the second album. And it's a a drastic improvement over their debut album, even though their debut album is good. You know, so yeah, I definitely see how and why that happens.
Right.
You know, just kind of an evolution.
Well, there's also that kind of that relief too. You know, the first album, regardless of how it's recorded, even if it's done professionally with, you know, full budget, you're re-recording those demos, those songs you wrote when you were, you know, in your bedroom and
or on some bus somewhere,
or on some bus, and you were working those songs through, playing like shitty bars and shit. So, you know, that being said, there's a different, you're hungry then, and not to say that you're not hungry on your second album, but there's a level of relief where you can truly open up. And
depending on how that first album did, you're definitely living a different lifestyle,
right,
when you're recording your second album than you are your first.
Right. I mean, look at the difference between the Greta Van Fleet's EPs to what their first full
Peaceful Army.
I mean, that's a perfect example in my opinion. Even though it's obvious it's the same band, it's obvious that they're kind of writing from the same place, but their writing, I think, was just better. You know,
I think a lot of, especially with music from, I'd say like the early to mid part of the 90s on until today, I think over the last 30 years, producers matter more now than they did before, especially like once Pro Tools and all that stuff came about, and music started being recorded digitally. I think that's when producers really became vital to the process. And you can take an album, there's bands I love where you can hear stuff that they did on an album with a better producer, and it's just a hair better than the stuff that they used with, you know, earlier in the career or with or with lesser than producers. Or a lot of times I've noticed in that, especially now, you're having a lot of stuff that's like self-produced. And I think a lot of times, I think 72 Seasons is a victim of that also, where you've got a producer that's more of an engineer, and Lars and James were doing a lot of the producing on that album, where a lot of times you need that like that outside person sitting in the booth and saying, look, maybe you should try something different or go down. It's good, but here's some ideas we can use to kind of make it an even better song, or an even better album.
Have a fresh set of eyes or ears in this case, and someone whose investment in it isn't personal. It's, they could take a much more rational look at things. I have no problem with self-production, and I think there's times where an artist would have been better off self-producing. The Jimmy Page, Robert Plant album, Walking into Clarksdale. I mean, that to me, it was the producer on that just kind of ruined the album, the production of it. Those songs were fantastic songs. They were just not done well in terms of how they were produced. And I think, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were seasoned enough where they could have produced that themselves. Arguably not. I mean, it could have been worse if they'd done it, but whatever the choice on producer was, I don't think they made the right choice on that. It's a great album, but it's just it's a flawed album for sure. So,
and kind of go back to the video. So I took a whole lot of heat for Sgt. Pepper, and then surprisingly, I wasn't really expecting this, a shitload of people agreed with you
on Pet Sounds. Good.
I was not really expecting that. I mean, I get it that
I was expecting to get shit on for that too, but I guess I didn't. Wow.
They I'm trying to scroll down through here and see. There's a lot of people that are like, Sgt. Pepper's the greatest album ever, but Pet Sounds is overrated. I don't think there was I'm surprised that there weren't like any flagged comments, because typically, like when we did the episode about the 70s, there was a couple of comments that got flagged. Let's see. So there's a couple people that are mad at me about Piper of the Gates of Dawn. Also, they thought it was the greatest album ever recorded.
I wouldn't go that far. I like Piper. I mean, I like Pink Floyd's music. I don't know. It's just not. It's not something I can. It's not a go-to for me. It's more of like I really have to be in the mood for it, and it does bother me sometimes when it's like that, and people talk about them like they're the greatest artists that ever lived, and I don't see it. So
I was trying to find. There was somebody that was really kind of pissed off, and I'm trying to find their comment here. I don't know. I can't find it, but it was something along the lines of they said that we were internet trolls. They said, "Wow, it's a channel dedicated to trolling people," and I was like, "Trolling people? Like, we've done 2 of these fucking videos. We've got over 500 videos that we've done, and we've done two videos calling things overrated." So I don't know. I thought it was really kind of interesting.
Then, trolls are what they're doing. You don't make videos to troll. You make comments on that's trolling. Trolling is not making videos. You can be wrong and you can be toxic for sure, but you can't be a troll.
Oh, here it is. Well, this is what the guy's comment is. Well, that's a first for me. A whole channel dedicated to trolling people. To dismiss Pet Sounds, Piper of the Gates of Dawn, and Sgt. Pepper just goes to show how little you know about music. Maybe just stick to something you do know about. Soccer, fly fishing, knitting, food. That's what he said.
Oh.
Yeah. I said
backhanded fat joke at the end there.
Yeah, you like that? And I said dedicated is quite a stretch. Out of over 500 videos on the channel, we have done 2. The quality of specific albums. I think we did a pretty good job of laying out the case of why we think those albums are overrated, at least as much as we can in a 10-minute video. Like, I don't know what people think. I like, and I've gotten comments like that before, like, oh, you need to have more detail. Like, well, okay, fine. If I want to do a video about one fucking album, I can spend 10 minutes talking about it and go into greater detail. But in a video where we got like 6 or 7 albums and over like 10 or 12 minutes, you don't have a whole lot of time to go like track by track why you think this song sucks. Like,
no, you don't. So
I just thought it was really kind of funny. It was interesting. I don't know. I'm sure we'll probably do more of those videos in the
well, we still have the 80s, 90s, aughts, and teens to do.
I don't know, man. I don't like. I think it'd be really hard to do.
I would be tough. It would be tough on. I could find a couple. At least I could find at least 3 or 4 overrated albums from the 80s and probably from the 90s as well.
I could definitely do 80s. I think 90s might be kind of hard for me though.
I don't know. I could find 3 or 4 for sure.
I don't know, because it's like, I think there were so many like one-hit wonders in the 90s.
Opposed to the 80s?
Opposed to, yeah, I definitely think so. I'm talking about one-hit wonders that were like with the 80s, there was a lot in the early part of the decade, but with the 90s, there are huge one-hit wonders in rock and in
I wouldn't go after like one-hit wonders. I'd go after bands that like, hugely popular bands that have albums that I think are overrated.
Yeah. But what I'm saying though is, I think in the 90s there was so much diversity in music that nothing was like super highly rated.
Yeah, there's
like I think I could go. I could probably go. I mean, once we're further away from the 90s.
How much further can we get? We're 30 years removed already, and you and I aren't getting any younger.
A little over 20.
Well, yeah, from the early 90s on, I guess. But
yeah,
but you still equally. Neither one of us are getting any younger. We don't want to be doing overrated albums in the 90s when we're in our 60s.
Yeah. But
because then we really will be old men shaking our fist at the clouds.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, when it comes to music though, is especially with the 90s, and that's what I'm talking about, like time wise, there was so much music that was released in the 90s in so many different genres that I would say a vast majority of stuff we all just forget about. I would say probably like 95% of all the music we listened to in the 90s.
Well, let me throw this out there.
We've forgotten about it.
I like the album, but I think Jagged Little Pill is an overrated album. It was huge. Like, everybody had that fucking album.
But that's what I'm saying though, is like, is it that highly rated though?
It was for a long time.
Yeah. And that's why I said, like, now in hindsight.
Well, now the only people who give a shit about Pet Sounds are Beach Boys fans.
That's not true. It's still rated as,
Yeah, and Jagged Little Pill still considered a huge 90s hit.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
So there's examples, maybe not as many.
Yeah.
You could definitely find more maybe in the 80s, but
yeah, I think, well, and you're right. I mean, I could do a 90s video. I think it would be a lot harder for me to come up with ones from the 90s than the 80s and before though.
It was hard for me to do the 60s because there's not a lot of music I listen to from the 60s.
Yeah.
Or at least, regularly enough to judge its merits on, based on my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be easier for me to find those. Granted, there may be fewer of them, but it would be easier for me to find them from the 90s because I was there.
Yeah.
So
we lived through it, damn it.
We did.
I was there.
Can we have it back, please?
Okay, Computer is probably one.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that that's an overrated album.
It's held up as one of the like greatest progressive rock albums of the last 30 years.
And I wouldn't say that. I love the album, but I think you're right. If it's held to that acclaim, I'd have to look into it. But
yeah,
if it's held to that level of acclaim, yeah, I would definitely agree that that's an overrated album.
Yeah. But like, that's like the first one that popped into my head. I'd have to sit down and actually look at it and go through it all.
I mean, you could argue that as much as you and I are both Radiohead fans, you could argue that they are kind of overrated as a band too.
Yeah.
So, and that's coming from a fan of the band.
Yeah.
So there's definitely choices. So if we, we don't have to do them all at once. We can do decade by decade, and we're not going to go into the 50s, and we're only 3 years into this decade, so that's only three decades that we still have left to do.
Yeah. Another surprising comment that I got quite a few times in the video or about the video was that I was kind of shooting at low-hanging fruit going after the Beatles, because the Beatles are the most overrated band in music history, which I kind of go back and forth on. I could see
the argument, but I disagree with the argument.
Yeah. I think the Beatles were hugely influential to their time period.
Well, I think there's a lot of music that would not have occurred if it hadn't been for the Beatles. And you could argue that the Stones are there too, but the Beatles got there first in terms of mainstream.
Yeah, but I don't really let that play a factor, though, because, and somebody made that point too, like, oh, all the music you love today wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Beatles. Like, yeah, but like,
it could have been somebody else.
The 1968 Mustang wouldn't have existed without the Model T. I don't think the Model T is better than a 1968 Mustang. Just because you come first doesn't necessarily make you inherently better.
No, but the fact is that they were first. It's kind of like when people talk about grunge and alternative rock, they're always going to go to Nirvana. Is Nirvana the best example of that? No, but they're always going to go to Nirvana because they were the first to really break it through into the mainstream.
Yeah.
Does that detract from Nirvana? No, not at all.
I think Nirvana is a little bit overrated band also, but
maybe by the same standard. Sure. I don't know. I wouldn't say that I like Nirvana better than I like Soundgarden or Pearl Jam. I mean, they're slightly different bands, but because I like those other bands better.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with the fact that the Nirvana just got there first, and the Beatles, same thing. They got there first, and they did it. Both bands did it with really good music that still holds up today, regardless if you're looking at through the lens of almost 60 years for the Beatles or 30 years for Nirvana.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't saying that. I don't think they're overrated. Like I said,
no.
I think they are one of the most influential bands in music history
because of that.
But I think there's other bands of the time period who have been maybe not as influential, but influential for longer periods of time. I think that bands from the last 20 plus years really aren't influenced by the Beatles anymore.
Right.
The bands that they're influenced by are influenced by the
Beatles. Yeah.
But the influence, like the direct influence on bands today, I think.
Well, and
I think there are other bands. Yeah. But I think there's other bands from the late 60s, early 70s that are probably more influential today than the Beatles are.
Yeah.
On bands and music today.
That's a fair argument.
I think that's where some people kind of come across and say the Beatles are overrated because of that, which, like I said, I don't think they are, but I see the argument. I see why people think that.
But you and I, if we're doing a video, we're going to have to put our own opinions in, and our opinions come from an era where bands that were coming out were still being influenced by John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. And like I said, the Rolling Stones could just as easily have been the first. They just weren't. They were the second. And who knows? Would they have been as influential? I don't know. But they're influential in their own way as they are. So who knows? It's one of those things. It's just, you can't argue it. I hate Elvis Presley, but I can't argue that what he did was influential.
Oh, absolutely. Because
I can't argue that.
There wouldn't have been a lot of the rock that we got in the 60s and 70s had it not been for Elvis.
Specifically, and
Elvis whitewashing black made music.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because that's always been kind of my problem with him, is that whatever he was doing Chuck Berry was doing it better. The same thing, but better. And Chuck Berry was not the king of rock and roll.
But
in many ways, he was doing it better. But then I was watching a YouTube video with a guy who he does reactions to music he's never listened to before. And I forgot what he wasn't doing music. He was reacting to an interview with David Bowie from 1983 on MTV. And David Bowie was talking, that was the point of what he was talking about, was that MTV really wasn't showcasing a lot of black artists at the time. And he was questioning the VJ about it. And the YouTuber is black. And he said that he pointed out that if it weren't for Elvis, there might not have been as much that whitewashing made it more acceptable, made a lot of that black music more acceptable. So people were more likely to go out of that comfort zone because of that and maybe listen to those black artists.
Yeah.
That's his view on Elvis. And it made me think, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't give him such a hard time. I still don't like him. I still don't like his music. I still think he was a puppet. And
he absolutely was a puppet. And absolutely.
I don't think he deserves the acclaim that he gets. That being said, I can't argue that point, especially as a white man. I can't make the argument against that, because that's a black man making that argument. And I think it's valid. That opinion is valid. Yeah. For at least from his perspective. So I have to respect that.
And I think that's the thing that a great point about the Rolling Stones also is that they did a lot of that themselves also, whereas, the Beatles were largely doing their own music.
Right.
Really from the beginning. They had some covers that they would do. But the first 6 Rolling Stones albums are all fucking covers.
Yeah.
Or almost entirely covers.
Yeah. Their music was always, at least up until maybe the late 70s, where it got a little disco-y. It was always very blues driven.
Yeah.
Very derived from black music.
It wasn't until the mid to late 70s when they kind of went away from some of that. Tattoo You was the last, I think classic Rolling Stones.
Well, wasn't that
that 80s? That was 78.
Was it 78?
But a lot of that stuff was recorded earlier in the 70s. It was a compilation album.
But they came back near the end of the 80s to more of that blues rock.
They did
drive, and they've kind of stayed with that for the most part.
Yeah, but earlier in their career, I want to say the first album that they did of all their own music was Aftershock, which is 64, 65. I want to say
which might account why they were second in that influential list.
Yeah, but a lot of their earlier music was a lot of black artists' music that they were doing, blues, a blues rock version of that blues music.
Right.
So, I definitely give the Rolling Stones credit there also.
Oh, I do too.
In the same vein that I give Elvis, with Elvis though, with the Rolling Stones, that was something that they, as far as I know, did on their own. They found those songs and they knew that music. I don't really know how much influence Elvis had into what he was even singing.
And let me again play devil's advocate.
Colonel Parker was pulling the strings on all that stuff.
Right. Because I've made my views on Elvis very clear. That I also have to take into account that what he was doing was in the 50s. The 60s, things were changing in society anyway.
Absolutely.
So, it was moving in the right direction, whereas it wasn't moving at all in the 50s.
Yeah.
So, I got to take that into account too.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about that for 40 minutes, let's get to our topic real quick before we get the show. Because I had a whole other list of stuff I was going to talk about, but we'll do the topic first. We'll talk about some other stuff next week.
Sure.
So we just had the 2023 MTV Video Music Awards.
Which doesn't even make sense because MTV doesn't even play videos anymore.
Sure they do.
Do they? What, 2:00 in the morning?
No, I watch MTV Classic all the time.
That's MTV Classic. That's not MTV.
It's videos from the 80s and 90s, man.
Yeah, but that's not what the VMAs is promoting, you know.
But the VMAs, like, there are still music videos made all the time.
Yeah, for YouTube, for Vimeo or Vimeo.
But here's the thing, though, is if you are Ian Trumbo, the musician, why wouldn't you make a music video and then put it out on your YouTube channel? Because you're not going to be making money off of it being on, you know, Vimeo or MTV, if MTV really existed anymore. Right. You're gonna make more money putting it on your YouTube channel.
And that's every artist does. Every artist has, at the very least, they put up a lyric video with some animation and stuff.
I think
makes sense. I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying I'm questioning the MTV side of it. You know,
well, because MTV is still the hub for all of that. So, I mean, there's probably more music videos being made today than there were 10 or 15 years ago.
Right. Well, they're cheaper to make now too.
Oh yeah.
You know.
But so my issue with it is, and I don't know when this changed, because I don't remember it being like this before. I thought at one time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I thought like there was like people that voted for the VMA categories. Like there was a like MTV panel that like would pick winners.
No, I think it was, they would set their nominations based on like airplay and requests and stuff like that, but it was always voted on by the audience.
Because that's my issue with it. It was like I was watching it this year, and like every single category is all fan votes.
Yeah, well, I think it always was, but I think there was I don't know what the nomination process is.
It wasn't always that way, because I know it wasn't like that in at least the 80s and early 90s.
That's how they kind of separated themselves from the Grammys.
So there was always like
there wasn't a committee or council that decided these things. It was down to the fans and the people who watch MTV and things like that. That's how I always thought it was.
I don't know. I don't remember being it like that at least I said in the 80s and early 90s. I thought there was like early part of the 90s, they implemented like a fan category where fans would like call in to vote.
Right.
But like now they have like special days where if you vote on this Tuesday, your vote counts for 3 votes and stuff like that. Yeah. And so you get done with the show, and I want to say there was like 3 or 4 categories they didn't even announce the winner for because they hadn't tabulated all the fucking votes.
Right.
That's
because you get 1 million people calling in. Well, it wouldn't be 1 million, but you get,
and they all call. It's all online.
Right. You get 1 million people doing it, and then they have to count 3 million votes.
Yeah, and some of the and I understand. I like Taylor Swift. I thought Midnight's was a good album, but did she really need to win 9 fucking VMA awards? That's why I said it's all.
Well, you and I have had this conversation already.
It's first off, I will say that I give her credit for one thing, and that is like they kept like going to her during the show. She knows fucking music. Like every artist, I don't care if it was Demi Lovato, she's like singing along with it. Måneskin, when they performed, she was fucking singing along with them also. Like, so I give her credit. She knows music at least.
Yeah.
But you know, some of the categories she was in, I don't think she deserved to win. But like I said, when you got like double and triple count days to vote and you load up on votes for that day, it's a lot easier to win that way, isn't it? It's almost
imagine.
It's almost like you're rigging the election, Donald Trump.
Taylor Swift.
But she did win, I think it was 9 to the 11 nominations she won. And like I said, I just don't like, and I'm not huge on, like, the only reason I watch VMAs is I watch the VMAs for performances. Same reason why I watch the Grammys. I don't really get into you know, the awards themselves. I really don't care.
Right.
I just don't like that, like I said, I just didn't remember it being like this big popularity contest.
No, I think it always was. I really do.
But
yeah.
I
think it
know.
always was.
If I'll have to look into it because I don't think it always was that way. Like I said, in like 83, 84, it definitely wasn't that way.
Maybe it wasn't back in the beginning, but I remember
all those in.
I remember in the 90s they made a big stink about it. It was like, we're not the Grammys. We it's based on what people want, what people are listening to.
Yeah.
And maybe at that time, because you didn't have internet and you did have to make an effort to call in and vote. Maybe it just didn't come off like that, but I think it's always been that way. I really do.
Let me see if I can look. We'll do some live Googling here.
Live Google Live. We'll do it live. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
2006
is when they started doing audience votes.
Yep. All general categories became fan voted. Yep.
And how was it done before that?
Before it was just one category that was fan voted.
I know. How were the other categories, the nominees chosen? And
they had to have been the same way that everyone else does it. There's a committee that votes on who the best is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah, it was the Viewer's Choice Award was last given out in 2006.
And now they're all Viewer's Choice.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've never been a big fan of the VMAs. I mean, I like the old 80s stuff, just again because of the performances. Yeah. But once you get into the 90s and 2000s, it's just
Oh no,
it's flavor of the week. It was always flavor of the week to me, and I just
Yeah, I think that there was always, I don't know. I would prefer to watch the VMAs over the Grammys. I've always kind of been that way. I've always loved the VMAs ever since I was a kid. Right. I've watched them almost every year. But then I went probably 5 or 6 years without watching them. And then within the last probably 3 or 4 years, I started watching them again. And that's when I noticed like it seemed to be like the same person, whether it's Taylor Swift or Beyonce or BTS won all the fucking awards one year.
Yeah, One Direction I think was big.
One Direction, yeah. There's like every year there's one person that wins like all the fucking awards. Right. Whoever the flavor of the month is or whatever.
Yeah, and like I said, that's kind of how I always suspected it was. But what do I know? Maybe it just seemed like that. But
yeah, and then I was trying to find there was one category. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It's the best alternative category.
Alternative to what?
Best alternative rock category for this year, which is still a category. First off, it was one of the ones that weren't tabulated until after the show ended. Because I'd like go online.
Yeah, because they didn't care.
Yeah. Let's see who it was. I remember because Blink was up for it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Best alternative. So you had Blink-182 was nominated, Boy Genius, Fall Out Boy, Paramore, 30 Seconds to Mars, and Lana Del Rey.
Okay.
Who would you think would win out of that category?
Well, say the nominees again.
Blink-182, Boy Genius, Fall Out Boy, Paramore, 30 Seconds to Mars, Lana Del Rey.
Well, I haven't listened to any of their new albums, including Blink. I haven't listened to anything by Blink recently.
Oh, Blink hasn't released anything in a year.
Oh, I thought they were just releasing a new album.
No, their new album comes out October 20th.
Oh, okay. So how
they were nominated. They were nominated for Edging, which is the first single off of the album, which came out last October.
Gotcha. Which I haven't listened to.
Yeah. Boy Genius is a super group. Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridges, their album is okay. It got a whole bunch of fucking hype though, but I wasn't a big fan of it. But.
And 30 Seconds to Mars, I haven't listened to in a long time.
I will say, so their new album came out. So the song that they were nominated for is Stuck. That's the first single off of their new album, which is It's the End of the World, but It's a Beautiful Day. I think it's the name of it. It's very fucking different. Like I've never been a big 30 Seconds to Mars fan, like never. Their one album with like the tiger on the cover of it, I thought it was a good album. Hurricane was a good track off that album. They had a couple of okay tracks. There's only like one or two songs I liked off of their album. That's about it though. The new album I thought was really fucking good. It's very, very different. They're because after their last album, which came out in 2018, called America, I think it was, horrible fucking album. Easily one of the worst albums I've heard in the last decade. Wow. Absolutely terrible. Their guitarist quit the band after that. Yeah. So it's just Jared Leto and his brother Shannon are the only two members of the band now. But it's an electro pop album. I thought it was really fucking good. People are fucking shitting on this album though. But
electro pop. I guess I'd have to listen to it because I mean I like synth pop, synth rock. So yeah. I mean, is that similar? I mean,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Grant, when I say synth rock, I'm kind of referring to more to the '80s synth rock, but yeah, I think there's some artists who have done some decent synthy kind of rock stuff recently. Yeah. So
I would definitely put it. I would definitely. It's definitely. I mean, I think electro pop and synth rock, or synth pop, it's all kind of the same thing.
Kind of the same thing. Okay.
But it's definitely like a modern. It's not, when you say like synth rock, it's not like 80s synth rock.
Right. I mean, there's still guitars. Duran.
No. There's hip hop, trap beats and things like that. But there's still guitar and stuff on it.
Right.
Like I said, I thought it was fantastic. I went out and bought the Target version of it this morning. I'll probably end up getting a CD. Like I said, I was really impressed with it. Man, like I said,
I'll give it a listen.
People are absolutely shitting on this album. And I think it's mainly because how drastically fucking different.
So how did it get into the category if people are shitting on it so much?
Because the first single, I mean, because it was just the first single. And I don't know, people just didn't know like the rest of the album was gonna sound like that, maybe, or what. But so yeah, like I said, who do you think would win out of that category?
Well, to be honest, 30 Seconds to Mars and Blink are the only two bands that I even really kind of know their music well enough. And if given the choice, I'd pick Blink because I know Blink. I know them better.
So Lana Del Rey featuring John Batiste won for best alternative fucking album. And
I wouldn't imagine her being rock, right?
I wouldn't even put her in a fucking alternative category.
Right.
But she's a hugely popular musician. John Batiste is hugely fucking popular also. John Batiste just won for album of the year last year.
But if you're going to put them into a category that doesn't really apply to them just because they're popular, then what's the point of having the category in the first place?
Well, I know that. My first issue is that they were in the category. Second issue is that they won.
Yeah.
Yeah. Måneskin did win for best rock over Foo Fighters, Linkin Park, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, which I figured Metallica was going to win for Lux Eterna.
Which is a really good song, actually.
It is a really good song. So I was really kind of surprised they won for that one. Some of these, like, I don't know. It was a very interesting show. Like I said, I stopped watching it for the awards years and years ago.
Right. Still, it's fun to see who wins, but more times than not, even, and this is true with any award show anymore, you just like, really, that one is what won, that's in that category. It's just, and that could be just a symptom of the fact that everything's so blended now. But
I will say, like,
they seem pointless at this point,
So, like I said, I watch it for the performances. They did a performance for the 50th anniversary of hip hop, which, like, the individual performers did okay, but like, I don't know, I just thought it was a really kind of shitty collaboration that they put together for it,
like thrown together too quickly or something.
Yeah, kind of like that. Olivia Rodrigo, man, at least YouTube her performance and watch it. I thought she fucking absolutely killed it. Her performance on the VMAs, that was like the one performance that really stood out to me. Demi Lovato did really good also. But I don't know, Demi Lovato's, she's gone down this like weird, like rock, like hardcore path,
which is fine. I don't think much of her as a person. She's just she comes off as so weird to me. Like,
they're all fucking, every fucking musician.
I know, but most of them can hide it pretty well. or at least funnel it through their music rather than their outward personalities.
Yeah,
I don't know. Something about her just doesn't. I don't know. And that her last album that I listened to because you said it was good. That
I really liked it.
a rock album. It was okay. There was some decent tracks on it. It's definitely not something I would be willing to put on or buy.
So she's released a new album where it's not really a new album, it's a re-recorded album, but she took like, I don't know what it is, 10 or 12 tracks from her like big pop career and did them as like hard rock.
Okay.
I haven't listened to it yet, but I'll at least stream and check it out. But
I mean, Nita Strauss, Alice's guitar player, went on tour with her.
Yeah, she was on tour
for a year or two, I think. Almost 2 years.
It was less than a year.
Was it? I thought it was at least a full year.
She was just on because she didn't play on Holy Fuck, but she did the tour. And I want to say
she's strictly up until now, and her solo album. She really isn't a session musician. Yeah, she's a live musician
until Road. But
well, she did her solo album before Road.
Yeah, but I want to say the Holy Fuck tour was only like 6 months long.
Oh, okay. It seemed like a year. Well, probably because it was announced earlier than what the tour was. So
yeah.
But I mean, said she had her playing guitar. I've seen her live. I've seen Nita Strauss live.
She's a great guitarist.
I know what kind of a guitarist she is. So, yeah, she's a shredder for sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, that says a lot.
But yeah, there's a couple of really good performances. I felt like overall performance wise, they weren't as good as they have been over the last couple of years, though. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just one of those years.
That's unfortunate. But I think everything has good years and bad years. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
There's been years where even if you're watching, like I think even the Grammys has had some off years where it's like, yeah, those performances just weren't. No one's talking about it.
Even in their heyday, they had years like
that. Yeah, absolutely. So, but I just think award shows are useless at this point anyway.
Whatever.
I really do. I just think they're just. Like you said, I think the vast majority of them, even when there's an academy or a voting, it's still going to boil down to a certain level of popularity more than actual art, which is fine. It's I guess it's kind of always been that way, but just it seems more prevalent now, or at least more optic, we'll say.
I want, at least with the VMAs, I want to see more variety. I don't like seeing, like I said before, I thought Midnight's was a good album. I don't want to see Taylor Swift win every fucking award.
Right.
But when it's fan voted and everything is fan voted, that's what you're going to get.
Right.
Well, it's because kind of downside.
Let's face it, I would say not her entire fan base, because I mean she does have a cross-generational fan base, but the vast majority of Taylor Swift's fan base are teenagers. And they have a lot more time on their hands.
I would say a majority is probably, I would say 16 to 28.
Yeah, well, still, the younger people have more time on their hands.
Yeah.
So, Blink isn't going to have. I mean, they might have the younger fans. There's no reason they shouldn't.
And I will say this also:
their 40-somethings aren't spending their time calling on Tuesday to get triple votes for Blink 182. That's my point.
I would.
But anyway. You would, but you have more time on your hands than I think most people do too.
I will say though, like if it was reversed, and Blink won 9 awards, I would say the exact same thing.
And me too. I would agree with that. I mean, unless they just came out with that, masterpiece of an album. I think their new album is gonna be pretty fucking good. I don't know if you saw the reel that I posted, but if you go on Instagram, I screenshot, somebody posted in a Facebook group like a quick clip of 9 tracks that are gonna be on the album. I took a screenshot of it and posted it on Instagram. It sounds really fucking good. Yeah, I expect it to be good. I mean, they've been working on it long enough. It's been a long time. They came into this album very fresh with, each other as well as the material. So
fresh. You said fresh with each other.
you know what I meant? Because this is the first time, this first album that the original three are together, right?
Well, it's not original, but Travis wasn't an original drummer.
You know what I'm saying? Since the heyday, yeah.
The classic, quote unquote, classic Blink period.
Right.
Real quick before we end the show, I did want to play one clip from this video real quick. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it or not. Let me see if I can turn it on.
When I teach masturbation, I'm always just like, have fun with it.
Got a little Tom DeLonge.
Who needs to be taught?
Yeah, just have fun with it. I thought it was really funny though, but that's I don't know. I'm pretty excited for this new album, but we'll see how it sounds.
No, I am too.
There's been other albums I've been excited for by other artists, and then when it comes out and it's not that good. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But any questions or comments, you can email us at entnowpod@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook, and if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. All the YouTube kind of stuff. That's all we got, man. Yeah, you want to add anything else?
No.
No? Well,
no.
Until next time.
I've given enough to the people. They don't need any more.
All right, man. Until next time.
Talk to y'all later.
Peace.
Play my role, let me tell you about it. This shit right here, man, I'm about it. Only real niggas reside around me. Yo, lady, drop a guard around me. Dip like I know you can, bitch. Show me the ropes like we in the rain.